Your PRs get approved, your tickets get closed. But when promotion talks happen, your name just doesn't come up. I still remember I walked out of that meeting and went straight back to my desk. I had a PR open, some pagination logic for some API endpoint, stupid little feature. I remember staring at the diff on my screen, didn't touch my keyboard for 20 minutes. The first 5 minutes, I kept replaying one moment. The VP had asked, why event-driven system and not batch processing? The principal engineer leaned back in his chair, smiled a little, and then walked through the entire decision like he had made it himself. He talked about all the latency requirements. He mentioned about the data volume projections. He explained why batch wouldn't scale past Q3. Perfect answer, confident, clear. One problem, he hadn't written a single line of code for that project. But when the VP said, good call, everyone in the room assumed he had designed the whole thing. And that's when it hit me. Hard work doesn't get you promoted. Everyone in your team works hard. The engineers getting promoted aren't working harder than you. They're positioning themselves differently. And I went from a junior to a senior engineer in under 2 years, got promoted over people with way more experience than me. And the shift had nothing to do with working harder or taking on more tickets. I had been grinding, API development, unit tests, small feature additions. I was closing tickets every week. Some weeks I'd push PRs at night. Some weeks I would work through the weekend. I thought if I submitted code on a Saturday, my manager would notice, see how dedicated I was, see how much I cared. That's not what happened. So what I did next, I stopped waiting for my work to speak for itself. The very next project I touched, I wrote a one-pager document before I wrote any code. Not because anyone asked for it, but because I wanted to own the story before work even started. I posted it on Slack, tagged the people who needed to see it. When someone asked a question about the project 3 weeks later, they didn't ask for me, they asked about Ninad's doc. First time my name got attached to any work, before the work was even done. By the end of the video, you'll know exactly how to get ahead of 99% of engineers and get promoted, even as an introverted engineer, without working hard or faking extroversion. You'll understand what senior level visibility looks like and how to create it without becoming someone you're not. But first, a quick check-in. Have you ever shipped something significant and watched someone else get the credit? Drop a comment. I want to hear your story. I know you're grinding on tickets, taking on more work, maybe even working on weekends, and you're watching engineers with half your output get promoted while you stay stuck. Here's why. The advice you've been following is actually making you invisible. Everyone tells you to keep your head down, work harder, take on more tickets, and your manager will notice how valuable you are. But there's one problem. Every other engineer is doing that too. You're not standing out, you're blending in. And now with AI, your technical skills have started becoming less impressive. AI does the work for you. So grinding harder on more tickets is the exact thing keeping you overlooked. You're stuck in low visibility, busy work, waiting for your manager to assign you something. Completing it, moving on to the next one. That cycle feels productive, but it doesn't separate you. It makes you replaceable. I did this for months as a junior engineer. I took every ticket, I delivered fast. I thought that was enough. It wasn't. Because my managers couldn't tell the difference between me and 5 other engineers doing the exact same thing. You can close 100 tickets and still be invisible. You can work twice as hard and still get passed over because hard work without positioning is just noise. But there was one meeting that changed everything for me. I was in a meeting with a principal engineer and a bunch of other engineers, and I watched something that completely changed how I thought about promotions. The principal engineer wasn't the smartest person in the room. He wasn't writing the most code, but what he was doing was building alignment. He was building trust. He was getting everyone on the same page, and people listened to him. They trusted him. They bought into his ideas immediately. And I realized something in that specific moment. If I was in his position, I wouldn't be able to do what he was doing. I mean, I had the technical skills, but I didn't have what he had. The way he spoke was clear, confident. People saw him as an authority. And that's when it hit me. Your technical abilities are just baseline. It gets you in the door, but what actually gets you promoted is how you communicate, how you build trust with people, how you position yourself. Because promotions aren't decided by who writes the best code. They're decided by who people trust to lead. And trust comes from how you show up in meetings, how you ask questions, how you summarize discussions so everyone's on the same page. The engineers who get promoted aren't always the best coders. They're the ones who create clarity for others. They're the ones who people want to work with. They're the ones who get invited to important meetings. And once you're in those meetings, you get access to the projects that actually matter, the cross-team initiatives, the architecture decisions, the stuff that senior engineers own. The principal engineer had great relationships with everyone, and because of that, when he proposed something, people didn't push back. They trusted him. So while I was grinding tickets, he was building influence, and influence is what opens doors. But you can't just walk into a meeting and start talking more. That actually backfires. Here's a question for you. Think about the last meeting you were in. Did you speak up? If not, what held you back? Comment below. So something no one tells you about high impact work, you can pour your heart into a project, ship something that actually matters, and still watch someone else get promoted for it. I learned this the hard way on one of my early projects. I was leading it. Did most of the execution, shipped the whole thing, but there was a senior engineer assigned the same project, and here's what happened. He did the bulk of the talking, he built the alignment, he communicated with stakeholders. I did the execution work. And when the project wrapped, guess whose name everyone remembered? Not mine. Even though my name was attached to it, people always thought of the senior engineer first. He got the credit, he got the visibility. I got the experience of learning that not all work is equal. There are three types of work you can do as an engineer. The first type is low visibility, busy work. That's waiting on tickets to get assigned to you, completing them, moving on to the next one. You're productive, but you're invisible. No one notices. Think about your last three projects. What type was most of them? The second type is what feels important but stays invisible. That was my project. I was doing real work. It mattered, but someone else was positioned as the leader. Someone else was in the conversations that matter. Someone else got remembered. And the third type is what creates natural visibility. That's the work we're not just executing, you're communicating the trade-offs, you're building alignment across teams, you're showing people how you think, not what you built. That's the work that gets you promoted. Most engineers spend their entire careers in the first two categories and wonder why nothing changes. So right after that principal engineer meeting, I started paying attention differently. I had a project coming up, a database migration that needed to happen. Pretty standard stuff, actually. The old me would have just done it, figured out the plan, executed it, asked for help when I got stuck. This time, I tried something different. I sent a message to my manager before I started. Just said I was thinking about a few approaches and I wanted to talk through the trade-offs before picking one. The wording felt clunky. I rewrote it 3 times, but I still sent it. We had a 15-minute call. I walked him through two options. Option one was faster but riskier. Option two took longer. Build had some rollback stuff. He picked option two. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. Send this right up to the infrastructure team too. They'll want visibility. That was a signal. Not promotion, not praise, just him treating my thinking as something worth sharing. That's when I knew the approach was working, but you can't just pick high visibility work and hope it lands. I used to think speaking up meant talking all the time. I'd watch these extroverted engineers dominate every meeting and think that's what confidence looked like. I was dead wrong. What I learned is when you're introverted, your power isn't in how much you say, it's when you say it. So most engineers talk to fill space. They just repeat what someone else said. They ask questions they already know the answer to. They're just making noise, and everyone in the meeting can feel it. I started doing something different. I stayed quiet for most of the meeting. I listened, I took notes, and then I would raise my hand only when it actually mattered, to ask a difficult question no one else was asking. The one that exposed a huge gap in the plan. The one that prevented a massive miscommunication down the road. And when you speak less but speak with purpose, people actually lean in. They pay attention because they know when you unmute it's going to be worth hearing. You're not the person who talks all the time. You're the person who asks the question that changes the direction of the entire meeting. That's leadership level thinking. And it doesn't require you to be extroverted. It just requires you to be strategic. Know when your voice adds the most value. Ask the question that drives clarity. Point out the trade-offs everyone else is ignoring, and then go quiet again. You're not trying to be the loudest person in the room. You're trying to be the person everyone remembers when the meeting ends. Pause for a second. When was the last time you asked a question that actually changed the direction of the conversation? If you can't remember, that's exactly what we need to fix. But most introverted engineers miss something. Speaking confidently in meetings is only half of it. The other half is what happens after you speak. So I never asked for the promotion. Let me say that again, I never asked. It came to me. I was in a one-on-one meeting with a manager and he said, Nanad, I've seen the kind of impact you're having. You're already having senior level impact. I think you're ready. That moment made everything click. I wasn't chasing promotions anymore. I wasn't updating my manager every week about tickets. I was focused on creating value for other people, making sure there was less confusion, less misalignment, showing the trade-offs that actually matter. thinking about business impact first, not just the best practices. And because I positioned myself that way, people saw me as a high impact engineer. The promotion came to me instead of me chasing it. And that's when I realized my strategy had actually worked. When you detach from the outcome and focus on perception, you stop grinding for credit, you start building authority. And authority is what gets you promoted, not hours logged. Authority. But if you think, okay, I need to work on positioning, where do I even start? That's exactly what I wanted to leave you with. Promotions don't come from more tickets, they come from how you're perceived when you speak.